Hi, welcome back to the studio here on another Inspiration of Painting. I'm glad you could join me today. We're going to have a great time starting this brand new painting, and boy have I got a surprise for you. We have done some research here recently that's probably one of the most exciting, most colorful by far, and most intriguing, I think, pieces of reference material that we've done in a long time, or maybe ever. And it happens to be close by here in our own home area. Now I'm going to show you what we're going to do here, and it may appear to be a little complicated, but it's not so complicated. There are just several steps involved. So if you'll pay real close attention, you'll follow this along very easily. And keep in mind, now we're doing the water mixable oils. You acrylic painters can do the same thing, and so don't hesitate to go ahead and follow along with us, or at least take notes, or whatever you have to do to prepare for this. And remember also, if you're brand new or joining us for the first few times, if you'll drop us a note or give us a call, we'll send you a complete layout sheet on your palette, your brushes, the materials you need to join us here on the program or to paint on your own at home. Also, if you're an acrylic painter, we'll send you a sheet also with all the materials you need to set up. So all of these paintings we do are conducive to either medium. There's a few different basic steps you have to follow, but the basics are the same. Now I've done a very quick rough sketch, which you may not see very well on the program, but my basic composition will be taken from this particular photograph. Now, I'm moving this tree over just a little bit. I'm going to open up the area where the pond is, so I'll have a little more space, and I'm going to have a little more color in it because it kind of blends in just a little too much. I'll probably put a little more of the blue sky here. We'll probably have just a little bit more color here in terms of having more of the whites and maybe the red buds popping through. Some richer greens and some darker darks and some lighter lights to create a little more contrast. But I love the arrangement of this. This is just incredible. We have some soft light here and then a darker shadow here, which gives us a little bit more of a full range of light and shadow and colors. And we get to also use a complete layout of our color wheel, which will be very exciting. Okay, here we go. We've got the basics laid out here. Let's go down to our palette now. Let me show you how we're going to start this. The first thing, as usual, is we're going to pre-mix our background color, which in this case will be the titanium white. So I'll just take a little scoop of the white here, a little touch of the ultramarine blue, about a pea size, and I'm going to put just a teeny smidgen, just a smidgen of the alizarin crimson. I mean a little smidge. Okay, I don't know if that's a word, but it's my word. And a little water, make it kind of creamy. Now remember, folks, using these water mixable oils, you have to put enough water in them to make them creamy, but the secret here is to mix the water in so that it does not separate. Okay, you see, if you take the time to mix it properly, you will not have any problems. Now this color is almost perfect, almost a perfect match to what the photograph shows. And although that's not our goal, is to match the color, we want to keep the values at least the same. All right, now see how nice and creamy that is, and I'm taking the time to mix it properly. Now, let me point out some things. I'm going to spend a lot of time in these next few weeks explaining this to you so that you'll understand the steps without getting confused. Step number one, if you'll notice now, the light blue sky, which is almost the same color we just mixed, coming through. Well, folks, remember that this being oil, and most of you will have some wet areas and some dry areas from week to week. In my case, we do these shows sort of simultaneously, and my painting stays wet most of the time, so it's a wet on wet technique. Yours will end up being more wet on dry. So yours will be a little easier than mine over a period of time. However, what we'll do is we'll just pick these spots now with your number 10 or number 12 bristle brush, and you're just going to smudge in like this little areas of the blue. You're not going to paint the whole sky. Now that's contrary to what we normally have been doing, especially with the acrylics. You usually just paint the whole sky area and then you paint on top of it. Well, in this case, because we have so much color and so many different colors, we cannot put it all a solid blue and then paint on top because it'll all blend in and become sort of mushy. So what we do is we sort of just hit and miss. Just kind of smudge in areas like this. Now see, there are some areas like on the right hand side that's more of a solid mass, so you don't have to put too much over there, but back in through here you see a little more blue, so you be a little bit more aggressive in getting this covered. Don't be afraid of it now. This is something you just have to dive in and do. Just work it quickly. And remember, especially in the oils, the 3 P's, the motto of our show, don't piddle, play, or putter. Because if you do, you're going to get in trouble. Now I'm putting enough here and there that you can be sure that when you put your greens and your other colors in here, that you have some edges. Now for instance, let me explain this to you. When you put this on, and this is the problem with a lot of instruction, sometimes you don't understand it because it's just automatic for most teachers and most artists. But when I put this on, if you'll notice, I'm dry brushing out the edge so there's not a thick, wet paint on there. See, all these edges have been smudged or sort of feathered out. And the reason for that is when you come back and put your green leaves on there, you have a soft edge that you'll overlap that will not let too much paint blend in, makes your color stay stronger, more vibrant, and more intense. So that's why you do that. See, I work the edges out. It just happens so quickly, it's hard to understand it or see it even. Kind of almost like magic. The hand is quicker than the eye. Okay? Yeah, I think we just about got enough here. All right, now very quickly, let's go down here to the water. And we'll do a similar thing, except that in this case, we're going to put a little wider area of water like I mentioned to you. I think it'll be a lot more effective for the painting. So let's put this on starting at the bottom. And be sure you cover the canvas very well. Work your way up. And again, we feather the edges. In fact, if I dare say this, I'm going to make this a rule. And it's pretty much a standard rule in any of the arts. But whenever you're putting on a color that you know is going to be overlapped by another color, always soften and feather your edges. It just makes the next layer so much easier, a lot more effective, and more professional. Now there's a little back in through here. Now you can actually see this, folks. It's just not real intense yet because the sun was just coming up when we were over there. We were over there very early in the morning. And by the time we got through the park, the sun was coming back up, or coming, not back up, but it was coming up a little bit higher, so we got more light. And you could see some of the other colors a little stronger. That's why you see all the photographs change, because as you go through the morning, you know, the light changes, gets a little higher, so you immediately get stronger colors. Within just an hour or so, you can go from a deep shadow to a bright sunlight. All right, this is probably enough of the blue. Now notice I'm using a horizontal stroke, and again I'm feathering out the edges. And I want you to keep in mind also, remember that painting is a mood thing. So here's the secret to this particular piece. If you'll notice here, while it's very vibrant, it seems relatively busy, and it is, it's still very soft and peaceful. And in order to get that peaceful mood, you want to paint with soft edges, soft colors, and have a lot of control over what you're doing. Now the next step here is to come down to our palette, and we're going to mix another color. By the way, save this blue because you're going to use it again later in an area that will be sort of touching up. Like for instance, when we start the sky up here, or putting the trees in the sky, there'll be areas where you want more blue, so we'll have it there to dab in and work around, so don't throw that away or throw it out. It's a beautiful color. All right. Now we're going to mix up the next color, and again, we're not trying to match the photograph, but like I said, I want you to understand here. I'm going to put this down here. Hopefully they can close in and see this. But you see the next thing after the blues in there are the light, sort of a yellowish, kind of a whitish green, okay? Now what you're going to do there, again, is take the white. Okay. In fact, let's mix up a pretty good batch. To that, you're going to add a pea size of yellow. Pretty good size pea. And a little touch of ultramarine blue. Okay. Mix that. And I want you to notice the magic Okay, now in this case, again, a few drops of water. Mix it in real good. I really want to take the time to do this properly, folks, and really make sure you have the information you need to do this. You acrylic painters will be doing the same basic thing. Just keep in mind that once the paint's on your canvas and it dries, you can't move it around, so you be sure, whatever you do, and you've heard me holler at you many times, keep the edges soft so that the next layer will cover it. All right, beautiful, beautiful color there. Now there are sometimes, folks, you can use colors straight out of the tube and maybe tone them down with a little white, change the value, but there are times when you just have to mix the color. You just can't buy it. They don't make it, and this is one of them. This is not phthalo yellow green. You can buy a color similar to this, but it's a lot more fun and more educational for you to mix it. Okay, we're going to do almost an identical thing we just did with the sky. We're going to take this color down. I want you to watch this. And in between those areas where the blue was, or is, you're going to put the green. But notice what I'm doing. I start in the hollow area, or the white area. I work my way up into the blue and blend it gradually. See how we're doing this? And up here. Now my suggestion to you is to wipe your brush out every once in a while to get the extra blue out of there. Okay, start here. And work right into the bluish color. So you end up with about 2 or possibly 3 different values. Okay, just keep working. Again, feathering your edges, keeping them soft and just beautifully blended. Now, we're not going to just stick with this color, but it's the one we start with, so we get that in there first. And then we go from there. And also, I want you to think about something. We're not putting the paint on real thick. We're painting relatively dry. In other words, what I mean by that is we're not putting a lot of thick paint on there. We're using more of a dry brush technique. And again, for that, the reason for that is because we're going to put layers of paint on top of layer. And if you have too much thick paint underneath, it just won't happen when you put the next layer on there. So you've got to put it on fairly dry in order for this to work properly. Okay. Now also, as usual, and for those of you that are joining us for the first time or just novices just learning, you got to remember everything is systematic when it comes to working with these techniques, whether it be oil or acrylic or even watercolor for that matter, which is one of my favorite mediums and hopefully we'll get into someday. But keep in mind that everything is a process. So you're not going to just paint it on, it's going to look like anything. You have to build it up in steps and layers, okay? So just follow along, don't get impatient. And if you want to learn to paint and really paint effectively, this is the fine art techniques that we use to create the more professional type work. Not that you have to be a professional, don't misunderstand, just have fun with it and you'll be happier if the results are a lot more effective. Okay. Now what we're going to do, when we get some of this in here, let's put just a little bit more up and through here. You'll notice this area is mostly darker, sort of a greenish gray, and so we'll be mixing that here in just a minute and start building from this light green, you'll see, to some darker greens until we get to the real dark green. So you create, again, a systematic approach to going from light to dark. In this case, you start from the background and come forward. Okay, I think that's pretty much all we need there. Now, using the same basic color, what you're going to do down here on your palette, add a little more blue to it to make it a little darker. Oops, don't get too much. There we go. It's another sort of a pea size of blue. Mix that in and let's kind of see what that turns out to be like right quick. We're going to warm it up though. And the way you're going to warm this up is you're going to add a little touch, and I mean a little touch, of alizarin crimson. Now, alizarin crimson is somewhat of an optional color. A lot of you don't have it, and we don't use it that often, but in this particular case, as you can see, we have a lot of crimson colors in here, so you always want to have that in the rest of your painting too. If you have an odd color that you're going to use, you want to repeat it throughout the painting. Now, if you'll notice what this does here, I almost got too much, but it's not too bad. It makes sort of a grayish green, and you will take this color now and you'll do the same thing we just got through doing. You can actually see this color. In fact, in a lot of these photographs you can see this color. Get this up here, and it may be just simply, as you can see back in here, that mauve greenish color, the grayish greens all scattered through. Same thing back in through here. You can see it. It's a wonderful sort of a middle range color for background. So you take your brush and you start at the base. Now don't start up in here, start at the bottom like this. All right, now what you're going to do, and this is the first time you're going to actually start beginning the shapes of trees. You see what I'm doing? I'm not just putting on color to fill up space now, I'm actually shaping things. All right, starting at the base. You're working up into the light green, and again that changes from a dark color to a light color, so you get 2 or 3 other values at the same time, which is a wonderful opportunity for you to understand the value system and how you get it by just blending one color into another. Pretty simple, actually. It's like anything else. I know many of you in your careers, whatever it might be, whether you're a pharmacist or a secretary or a construction person, it doesn't matter what you do, carpenter, dancer, or singer, we all perfect our talents, and we have a tendency over the years to perfect it to the point where it looks easy to the other person, and really it's taken years and years and years to learn that. And while this may not look all that easy, folks, it's simply a matter of understanding the techniques. Now I can learn, I don't know how to type, but I watch my wife type, and she types just incredibly well. And I don't understand it, but with a little time and a little practice, I understand it and the technique. Just same thing with this. If you just paint enough and you'll practice enough. We're getting all kinds of signs here in the studio. I get carried away talking and painting, and I forget what we're doing. I forget we're on a TV show here, and we have time limits. The only disadvantage to working with the TV show is that we've got to stop. And in real life, painters don't like to stop. Okay, let's just come on across here. I'm going to work a little quickly here. But what you're going to do between now and our next session, as we begin to run out of time here, is go ahead and try to take this color as far as you can. Notice I'm putting a little of this color up into the upper area. Get this photograph up here again. You'll notice the color is not just at the base, although that's where the strongest darks are. You still have some of it scattered throughout. I always start first at the bottom, and then when I start sort of cleaning my brush out, you might say, I dabble a little up here, a little over here, and really there's not a whole lot else you need to do with it. Don't cover up all of your yellow-green, just kind of enhance it here and there. And don't by any means cover up all of your blue. Okay, let's come right in through here. All right, this is already getting exciting. Okay. Now, I think that'll do it. Now, we won't get into this part till next week, but that'll be probably one of the first things we'll do is I'll show you how to get the background painted for this so that we can start laying in all of the other colors and things that make this work. Now, I will mention a couple things to you between now and our next session. Just simply by virtue of the fact that, I already have a lot of reference material, what I would recommend you do, if you can, is try to find some reference material on your own, either through books and magazines, newspapers, whatever, or maybe some actual live stuff. I don't know what time of the year you'll be seeing this show, but whatever time of the year it is, you can still go out and photograph trees, rocks, and leafy trees, dead trees. Maybe gather up some of your own reference material that you can add to this to make it a lot more exciting and more personal for yourself, okay? So what we're going to do here, we'll finish putting in some of the darker colors, come right across the base here. And if you'll notice now, we're already, even though we're just getting started, we're creating a little bit of depth. Also, I want you to do the same thing down here in the water, just a little bit across this section here, but I want you to stick with more of a, you can put it on with a horizontal, vertical, but always come back with a horizontal stroke to kind of smooth it out. Now again, I don't want to confuse any of you or mislead any of you, but you can see here this greenish gray mixture is left over from our last show. And please keep in mind, folks, that we do these shows simultaneously, basically one after another. I don't wait a week between paintings like you do. So the reason I explain that to you is because there's a good chance that your paints on your canvas are already dry or almost dry. And so you're going to have a little drier effect. Now, mine's still wet, so I have to keep my paints kind of fluid and creamy. Now what we're going to do is you take this grayish green mixture, and if you wrote those colors down last week, that was the white, the yellow, and the ultramarine blue, and a little touch of alizarin crimson. So now we're going to take that same color and we're going to make it a little darker, but this time we're going to add sap green. Okay, now in the acrylics, that's the equivalent or similar to Hooker's green. So now I'm going to add a couple of dabs of sap green, and I'm going to add a little smidgen of burnt sienna, which is the reddish brown. Just a nice pea size of that. Mix that in good. Okay. Now you see it's turning back to more of a greenish color as to a grayish color. And I'm going to test it real quick here. So let's go here. I don't think it's quite where I want it yet. It's a little too light still. Now I'm going to add a pea size of ultramarine blue and a touch more of the sap green. Now we don't want to get it too dark. Again, remember we do things in increments, sort of, step by step to create the darkness. We're going from one value to another. Again, if you need to make it a little creamier, add a little drop of water or two, which I'm doing here. And be sure you mix that water in very, very well, because if you don't, the water separates out and you get frustrated with it. It doesn't matter if you're using traditional oils and you're mixing linseed oil or some kind of medium, you still want to mix it in good so it all becomes united, part of the pigment. All right, now let's test this out. That looks a little bit better. Yeah, excellent. All right. Now we're using our number 10 or number 12 bristle brush. And I'm going to wipe it out here. Okay, now then, I want you to notice something. We got the blue, the light greens in there. There's even some soft yellows in there, which we may try to put in also. But now we're going to get into some of the deeper, darker greens. You can see it's almost the exact color right in there. We're not to this deep, dark, blackish green yet, okay? We're with the color, the darker colors behind it. So you take this, I'll set this right here so I can see it. Get a little room here. By the way, remember now, especially in a painting like this when you're blocking in, they put long handles on these brushes for a reason, folks. Don't get way up here like this and start doing this. That's going to get you in trouble because you'll end up with your nose all painted. But you got to hold your brush back at least midway or a little further and begin the process of putting on the paint like this, loose and free. You see, there's no way on earth that you can duplicate any of this. It's just literally impossible. So what we do is what we call create the illusion of depth and detail. Okay, so now I'm coming in here with the darker colors. I begin the process of shaping some basic tree formations. This is great fun, folks. Now this session and probably the next session will be, most of the time will be spent continually building the depth of the darker colors underneath the painting. Then the last couple of 3 sessions we will end up putting the bright colors in. So I'm going to ask you again to be very patient as we do this, because some of you get in a hurry. I know, I've been there, but you cannot rush something like this. This is the kind of painting that's most likely, if it doesn't turn out real good for you following the show, you do it on your own again, this painting will be fabulous. In fact, I'm going to do this again myself in my personal studio because I love this so much. Okay. Now also notice how I'm being loose and free, and I'm still allowing some of the background to sort of come through. I'm not closing it up completely. Okay, now very quickly, while you're doing that, I want you to notice now, this is not the water here, this is the ground area right through here. There's a large tree right there, and there's some moss growing on it as well. But right here is where the water's edge is. Let me draw a little line there. Okay, now what you're going to do is you're going to take this green while you're doing that, and you're going to dry brush this darker green into the water, and again come back with a horizontal stroke after you've put it in to kind of blend it and smooth it. See, work it down like this. Don't blend it too far down. Just dry brush it down, making sure the canvas is covered. Right through here it'll be just a little taller because this is the tallest area. Now see, I come back with the horizontal strokes. Boy, this is great. Already starting to look good. And I want to tell you something else, folks. Don't be afraid to pat yourself on the back now and then. When you do something that looks good or feels good or you're happy with, congratulate yourself. Not everyone else is going to do that because most people don't understand a painting at this stage. They look at it as nothing but blobs of paint, like you made a big mistake. My little boy, who is just very young right now, he always comes in when I'm doing my paintings in their early stages and he says, "Dad, how come you made such a mess of it?" Well, that's pretty much what most of us think of that don't have the education in art. The underpainting stage is a messy stage, and you just got to learn to get past it. And it's a good idea not to paint in front of anyone if they don't understand art, because they're not going to understand it. And they're going to think you really goofed it up. Most of us think that every time we put a stroke on, it's supposed to look like something, and that's not the case. Okay, now, right there, I'm going to show you something else now. You notice over here on the right-hand side, we have, just past this dark pile of green, we have a dogwood, we got a redbud, we've got some oak leaves, we've got some azaleas and rocks. This whole section right here is got a lot of color. So we're going to change the background color now. I'm going to wipe my brush out, and I'd like for you to take a little bit of this light blue that we had mixed up before, okay? Add just a little more blue to it. See how I'm just doing a small section of it? And then a little bit of this green that we were just working with. And I want you to, a little more blue. There you go. I'm making more of a bluish green, like this. And then I want you to come in here with a little touch of red. And I mean just a smidgen, but I want you to notice what I'm doing here. I'm blending it in. And this will suggest, and that's all it does, folks, is suggest the possibility of red buds. And we also have pink dogwoods. We have the white dogwoods. In fact, I was at our plant nursery picking up some flowers, and I had no idea there were so many different types of dogwoods and red buds, but there are. I was looking at them thinking, wow, I always thought there were just one kind. We have all kinds, so that's why we want to get a lot of color in here. Now also, at the same time, I want you to notice now, I'm going to pick up pure yellow, and notice I'm just going to dry brush in a little pure yellow, just to add that little bit of color to it. A little more here, because up here there's a spot or two where there's some yellow. Now see, I'm not blending it a lot here, folks. I'm really literally just dabbing it, okay? Now when you get towards the base here, we're going to make that darker. And what you're going to do is you're going to take your ultramarine blue, the sap green, and a little touch of the alizarin crimson. Now anytime you add this crimson, folks, it takes very little to get the job done. But you see, that's a much darker, richer, and it's a warm green as well. So now you just want to gently blend that in up into your background there. Don't go too high. Now again, I'm going to mention to you the 3 P's, don't piddle, play, or putter. That's our motto on the show. Some of you think that's kind of funny, and it is kind of funny, I guess. But I have noticed over the years as a professional teacher that one of the things that we struggle with the most is overworking our paintings. And you get mud, and you get things that you don't want, and that's why. It's because you spend too much time in one area. Now, you'll see here you've got a nice blend of color. That is not the finished product, but it's the background for all of the stuff right here, except for this real dark spot which we're getting ready to put in. And then when you come back with the whites and the brighter pinks and the yellows, it will really be vibrant, okay? Now, while you have a little bit of this color on your brush, right along the edge here, now I'm going to mix up just a tad more because you need some there in the water. Okay. Just on the edge, like this. And then a gentle, quick sweep across. There, and maybe just a little here. Now I also want you to notice what's happening with our water. It started out with just simple blue, then a little of this grayish color, a little lighter green, and then the darker green, and already the water is taking on depth that it didn't have before. Okay, now let's mix up this real deep dark green that you see here, and frankly you see it in the water, you see it underneath in different places around, so we'll lay it in all those dark deep greens throughout the painting. Just take this same green mixture that you were using. These colors are relatively easy to mix, so if you run out, don't be afraid to mix it again. And it doesn't have to match. You see, that's another thing I want to share with you. Don't worry about matching your color exactly. Just get it similar. Now, to that color, I want you to notice I'm taking a large scoop, and I mean large, of the sap green. I'm taking another pea size, or I guess you might say that, Texas pea, of ultramarine blue. A little more. I'm also adding a little smidgen of the alizarin crimson. Again, remember, don't put too much, but that'll deepen and darken it even more. Mix this all in good. And it may be creamy enough. Some of these colors are already fairly creamy, so you don't need to add the water. All right, let's see what we got here. Oh yeah, that's looking good. I'm going to add just a little bit more alizarin just to strengthen the intensity of it. Okay, very good. Now work that in real good with your knife. Then we'll start the layering up here on the canvas. Now you acrylic painters, if you'll notice, if you follow the acrylic shows, I don't spend as much time mixing. I do it most of it with my brush. But in oil, you generally have to mix it with your knife. Okay? Now wipe your brush out, and you'll want to wipe it fairly regularly when you go through this process because it will get kind of clogged up with the color underneath. All right, let's get our reference material up here. Now we're going to work this dark area here, okay? And you can see some deep dark pockets all the way around in here and along the shoreline and a little bit in the water, and that's what we're going to do. All right, now be very careful. Let's start right here. Now I'm afraid that we're going to have to darken that. Okay, let's go back down here. Sorry about that, but that's how you know. You go up there and test it. I'm going to take a scoop of ultramarine blue. More. A little bit more of the alizarin crimson. A little more blue in there. I want this to be very rich. Mix that in good. Yeah, I think that's better. Okay, now then take your brush. Yeah, that helps. Good. Now, put this on like so. Notice I'm sort of dabbing. Now this particular tree, as you can see here, there's the trunk. It goes up, it sort of leans in, and it has a lot of this moss hanging on it. It's really beautiful. And so that's why you want to create the texture or the shape of sort of it, kind of like an umbrella. Okay, so it's kind of hanging down, not just branching out or up. Okay, wipe your brush occasionally so you don't get that background color on it. Now remember folks, this is all underpainting. In the last couple of sessions we will put the highlights on. See, this tree will have highlights on it. All of this area will have brighter spots of light that will give it its three-dimensional character. Now up here, you see you start at the top. And you know that it goes on up. You can see there, this goes right on across. That gives the painting a lot more character. I mean a lot more character. Now don't give this an exact form. There's no such thing here. You just sort of build a shape here, and then we'll build our trunks and our tree limbs up in through there later. And of course our highlights will have a tremendous role in forming and shaping this. And notice how I'm shaping these trees. I'm trying to give him some nice soft texture with a little bit of form now. You can come over through here, put a little. All right, yeah, it's shaping up very nicely. Right through here at the very bottom, we'll have some darker green. And remember what I've told you the last couple sessions, this is very, very step-by-step oriented. We're going to have to spend time building this in layers. Now this tree trunk comes right on down about right to here. So if you want to, I wouldn't care. In fact, it might not be a bad idea, in fact, for you to go ahead and just take a little burn umber, which I think I'll do here. And just locate that trunk. You can switch to a smaller brush of your choice and just kind of block in that trunk right there. It's not the finished trunk, so don't think that. But sometimes it helps you identify where things go so you can see the shape. Now you can actually see how that trunk ties into the shape of this tree. Okay, and there, of course, there are a number of trees that you see back in the distance there. You can go ahead and dry brush those in if you'd like, just as a practical matter to help give you a little road map, so to speak, where you're headed. And you can see already how that sort of creates a little depth within the painting. Okay, now this middle ground here, this whole section, which is just to the left of the rocks, or that actually is a couple little waterfalls coming down there, it's going to also be done similar to what we've done back there. Beginning with this dark color that we have, this green. You see we already started there. I want you to come on around here, come right on down like this. Don't leave a hard line there. Remember, that's got to sort of taper, feather off, feather out. Over here, there's a little bit of this dark green as well. Now, here's where the fun begins. I want you to notice, folks, all of the yellowish greens, or the lime greens and the soft greens, that's what you're going to put as you go. So let's go down to our palette and begin to mix this. We're going to mix up a couple of colors, and you're going to have a lot of fun with this. In fact, what I would suggest you do is mix up enough of it that you can save it and use it for the next however many days or hours you're going to work on this painting. But if you'll take a large scoop now of just pure yellow, somewhere, well, let's say right here, okay, and to that, just add a little touch of the ultramarine blue. Let's mix that. You'll create a very nice lime green, which is a very important color in this painting. And you need to make a little greener green than that. So we'll do this again. Take a scoop of yellow. Dropped it right in my phthalo yellow green. Kind of a phthalo yellow green. It's not quite that color yet, but you mix that good. Now, you're going to do the same thing, except just add a little more blue to it, and you'll notice it makes it a greener green. So you really have two shades of that particular color. See, by adding more blue, you just make a brighter, more sort of a pure green, vivid. See there? So you have 1, 2, 3. 3 different values. You have a dark green, a light green, and a middle green. And basically, that's all you need to create general depth. There are many, many values in between that you'll have from time to time, of course, that will aid in the depth process. Now, as you go across, let me explain this to you, because between now and our next session, you may want to be practicing this or at least thinking about it and concentrating on it. But as you add the dark, for instance now, as I come through here like this, and I dry brush in some dark areas, all right, I want you to have a paper towel handy. And remember what I told you, this is a process, and just be patient with it. As you go across, now you pick up a little bit of the lighter green, and you sort of throw in with it. You can kind of work it in to create a third or fourth value, but please don't eliminate the bright color, which you need often. Now I'm going to go to the other green. That's the yellowish green. Now you can go to the brighter, more sort of a phthalo yellow green, which you can buy in a tube, and we may use that in our next session. Okay, you see how we're building this? Oh, this is just outstanding. Okay, I'm going to pick up some more of this phthalo yellow green color over here on this side. Now please keep in mind, folks, this is still underpainting. I have a feeling that sometimes we forget that we're underpainting. We're not trying to create a finished product yet. We are getting sort of, you might say, in position to do that. Now, I'll pick up some dark again. Throw in some darker areas. And see, every time you have a dark or a light contrast, you create a form that suggests a bush or something. All right, across there. Right here, we need some more dark. Right here. Wipe your brush often. Okay. I'm going to pick up some of the yellowish color, which I think is a great color for this. And in this case, I'm going to raise it up here like this. See, I'm going to create an actual bush or tree-like shape. Over here on this side of my tree. Now this large tree here, it is okay with me if you paint over it, or even if you leave it hollow. I don't really care. The main thing is you paint over it enough that just in case the tree changes slightly, that you don't have to deal with a lot of canvas to patch up around, okay? So keep that in mind as well. Now here we got a little brighter patch. You can see it right here, which I think we'll throw in there. Okay, well, as usual, folks, I got the sign. We got to quit. One of these days, we're going to have a 3-hour show. How would you like that? I don't know if they'll let us do that or not. But anyway, we've got to slow down here, and I hope you're having a good time with this painting. I certainly am. Now, remember we left off last week, and we were blocking in some of the intermediate, the middle ground area here, with some of the lighter greens and some of the darker greens to create contrast. We're going to spend most of our program today finishing the middle ground, some of the foreground, blocking in some of the rocks, continuing getting the underpainting as far along as we can before we start putting in all the bright colors, which is going to be exciting. I know you can't wait for that. I can't either. But now, excuse me, let's take our number 10 bristle brush or your number 12. And remember, let's go down to the palette here. Let me have them go down here and explain to you where we were when we left off last week. Now remember, we had the dark green. We had just mixed up a light yellowish green and then more of a lime or a phthalo yellow green. So we have 3 greens to work with here. So if you don't have these, let me just recap what these are. Excuse me. We have the yellow with a touch of the ultramarine blue just to give a light yellowish green. Then we have the same mixture except we put a little more blue in it to make more of a true green. And then we have the dark green here, which is the sap green, the ultramarine blue, and a little bit of the alizarin crimson. And you can also add, I had a little white in it just to soften it. And you just mix that and you create a real nice, deep, rich, sort of a grayish green. All right, let's continue on with the dark and green mixture. Now notice on the photograph here, and they're going to run footage throughout the show that shows you all of the different aspects of this particular area. Now this is, again, a park where it's not too far from where we live. And it's got a wonderful contrast because of all the deep pockets of the rocks, the little caves, the pathways, and the trees. So let's just move on across here. In this area you can see where I've sort of sketched in where all the rocks are. There's a little waterfall that comes through here. And so we'll build this first, dark, and then we'll come in with some of the rock formations, begin that process here in a little bit. Now over here, we need to get some contrast underneath these light green bushes. Notice now I'm being a little more specific with the shape of things. Okay, not being real careful, but I am being a little more specific with the shape. We'll get careful later on. Okay, a little darker here. Now, I want you to know something that just happened. This is a very common and something you should capitalize on when you can. Now, I didn't add any of this yellow-green down here, but when I put the dark green up like this and then moved it down, I created a middle tone. And then when I put the dark green in front of it, it just automatically happened that I have a contrast which create the shape of a bush. And so you see, that's the beauty of doing some of the blending on your canvas. It's just incredible. Now this whole corner here are these pink azaleas. And so I'm going to leave that open. That'll have a different underpainting color. Now let's move back over here on this side and continue. You can see the light yellow-green, the darker pockets, the brighter greens, the true greens. So let's go on across now. And right on this shoreline here, I want to put a little darker color, just like this. Now we'll come back and add some of the browns and the grays and those colors later, the earth tones that give us that look that we want. Okay, I'm going to come right on across this edge with a real deep dark green. Now I want you to notice I'm leaving just a little bit of a white strip there just so I can see the edge of the water, so that when I come back to put my shoreline on there, it'll still be identifiable. Okay. Now just kind of going through like this, kind of quickly. At this point, there's no sense in getting too carried away. But wherever I can, I'm going to make a definite shape of a bush or something like that. Now I'm going to pick up some of this greenish color, put it right here. Yeah, that's going to be great. Now I want you to notice that green right there very quickly. Put a little bit of that in the water here. Now I'm going to give you another rule. Not only do we feather our colors, but whenever you're doing water, whatever goes above goes in the water. That's what creates the wetness, the look of wetness in the water. Whatever you put up here, you reflect it down in pretty much immediately, so your colors will be similar. Doesn't have to be a perfect match, but just similar. Now I'm taking up a little bit of the green and I'm adding a little bit of the alizarin crimson. Now let me explain to you why we're doing this. As we go across, wherever you see a pocket where the red flowers are going to be, you will now do a reddish underpainting, okay? So let me come down here to the palette, and I want you to watch how I do this so that I won't, and then you'll just automatically do it. Okay, where now I may say to you, okay, now we're going to put in the underpainting for the red azalea. So you'll take your green like this, a little dab, see? And you take the alizarin crimson like this, and you mix it in very quickly, like that. All right? Then you come up here to your canvas, and you see you create sort of a reddish background, which will be very conducive to our azalea underpainting. You put a little in the water, see, just like that, not much, but just a little. So, and you can see it here. In fact, I have a larger photograph. I'll get it out in a minute or in our next session that shows a little more of the water area, which I like, and it'll have a little more color in there you can see. But right now, just kind of block this in here. There's a whole bunch of azaleas here, these reddish ones. Now, I have to say this, it was just kind of fun to go over there. We had a hard frost even that killed or, turned some of the azaleas brown, but we were amazed at the incredible amount of color that was still there after this hard frost, which is unusual for this time of the year for us. We normally don't get that much cold weather at this time of the year. Now I'm reloading again, just taking the green and the red, or the alizarin. Don't use red because it'll turn kind of muddy on you. Now you see this is the area to the left of this tree. You can see the little azaleas all through here. So we're going to block in a redder underpainting for that. And you can see this ridge of red azaleas all the way across here above the rocks. Come on across like that. Notice I'm feathering. I can't say enough about feathering. Okay, now right down through here, throw in some, and then we'll come back with some more greens. Now over here on this side, right in this little pocket right there, because we already have some green underneath, you probably just pick up the alizarin by itself. And so you just kind of blend that in like this. Okay, I think we have enough now that we can go back. Now this time, because of the red, it does have a tendency to turn your green sort of a grayish color. I'm going to rinse it out in the water now. Again, using the water mixable oils. This is a very easy thing to do. It's amazing that you can just dip this in the water and rinse your brush out like you could a watercolor or an acrylic. And you still have the same consistency and the same effect of the traditional oil. It's not any different at all, in fact. I find it very similar. Okay, now take your greenish colors, now the two light greens, the yellow green and the greener green, and in between these pockets of that reddish color, you will now throw in some of these. And see, I'm being very loose and free. I'm not being real concerned about duplicating a particular shape at this point. Now, we will get a lot more picky about that in the next, well, probably the last couple of sessions. But right now, we just mostly are trying to find shapes, basic, simple shapes and color. Okay. Over here, a little bit more of that green. Okay, now remember we're still underpainting, so I got to keep mentioning that because sometimes we get a little carried away trying to make something happen that we're not ready to make happen yet. But I guarantee you, in our next couple of sessions, you'll really see this thing start to come alive. You just have to trust me. And where have you heard that before? It's like the check's in the mail. Well, actually, this is exactly what you have to do. If you've not had much experience with this type of painting before, you really need to pay close attention to how this falls into place. Okay? Now, we've got this pretty much blocked in terms of the underpainting, okay, for the greens and where the azaleas go there. Now let's block in where the rocks go. For that step, you're going to need a little smaller, flatter brush here. This is a number 6, or you could use a number 4 bristle brush. Whichever one suits you the best is fine. And let's go down to our palette here. And I'm going to take a little burnt umber with a little bit of the ultramarine blue and a little touch of the alizarin crimson. Okay, now those colors will create a nice, rich, dark value, which you'll see up there. You see, it's just really deep. Now, I'm going to hold my brush back, and I'm going to begin locating these dark pockets. And there's quite a few here, so just follow along. We're not trying to create a particular rock, but mostly the location of the rocks. You see, like this. And by pulling in some darkness back in this little pocket back here, you create the suggestion that this little rock pile forms back in through there and creates sort of a stream area, which we will have, and we'll have some water trickling down there a little bit later. This whole section on the right side of the tree is just rocks. And there's a little bit over here where it sort of ends and fades into the bushes and the azaleas. I don't know how many varieties there are here, but there's tremendous variety of azaleas here. Okay. I just keep building this. You can add the blue, the umber, and the alizarin. A little more blue in there. Now notice I'm using sort of a horizontal stroke. These rocks are limestone, sandstone, a variety of rocks, and they are a little flatter. They're not the big boulder type. There are some there, but in the area where the water is, waterfall, they're more of a flat rock, so you need more of a horizontal effect here. Now remember, we will make rocks out of these later. Those of you that have followed the show now for the last several years, one of the important things is, I've really spent a lot of time working on rocks with a lot of you, because rocks seem to be the biggest problem that most of us have. Well, the way you make a good rock, instead of making individual rocks right in the beginning, you just blob on the color like this, and then you come back later, and it's the highlight that makes the rock. It's not this part. It's the highlighting. So when you have a collection of rocks like this that are stacked on top of each other and piled up, just build the basic shape, you see, which is what we've done here, where the rocks go, and then I'll show you how to separate and make individual rocks later. Okay, now we have the shoreline here also. That needs a little darker color. And there are lots of small rocks that you really can't see in the photograph, and you may not be able to see in the footage, but it's all along the shoreline here. You'll see smaller rocks. And notice how I'm kind of dry brushing, softening that edge there. Okay, and just keep going along here, because on the right-hand side, there's another fairly good collection of rocks right here. So we'll make a little bigger area. And again, I'm going to dry brush slightly down into the water, just a little. There's some rocks right here in front of those azaleas. A couple of larger ones there. All right, now we're making it. A little bit right here. Getting pretty exciting. Of course, as you know, I get excited about a lot of things. But this is very exciting to me. Now then, I want you to notice something here that's important. Notice, if you will, and also on the footage, you may be able to see it better there because it'll be maybe a little larger, but you've got lots of tree trunks that are coming up through the background. Okay, they're all through here. While we have this dark color on our brush, now this is this is actually a number 4 bristle brush. If you want to switch to like a flat sable brush, like like we use for some of the other details, like a number 4, or even a little round sable brush, that would be fine too. But I'm going to just take this one because I can chisel the edge here, and I'm going to take the same color we were just using for the rocks, and holding my brush back like this, I'm just going to start locating the trunks of these like this. And by turning your brush sideways and gently scraping, if you will, the surface of the canvas, you can create dark and light values depending on how much pressure you put on there and how much paint's in your brush. And I want to remind you that if you're painting along with me and if you're not just taking notes and going to do this later, your painting is probably drier than mine because a week has passed and it's fairly sticky or probably kind of dry in some places. You will probably want to put just a little bit more water in your mixture and perhaps a little bit of white to tone it down, because what's happening to me is as I drag across this background here, my background is still wet because we do these shows simultaneously, one right after another, so I don't have a week between each painting. So my background's still wet. See, when I go up, the lighter color blends in and it creates a softer, grayer, more distant tree shape or value. And in order to get that with a dry background, you need to add a little white to it to create the same effect. So you see, that's what I'm saying. There's not, and your acrylic painters are the same thing. You'll have a dry background, so add just a little white to your color to soften it so that the value won't be too dark. Okay? There's so many little things like that, folks, that you just have to understand before you can really be effective in your painting. Okay, now we got some of those there. Let's come over here. This even just doing this adds a lot of great character to the painting, just putting the tree trunks in. Of course, you know me, I'm a tree nut, so I'll put trees in anything. I'd even put trees in a little seascape if I could. I think trees are so incredible. All right. And notice, see, I'm using a lighter pressure here, so I create a softer tree. So if I'm going to put the darker trees in, I always put those first. Like this one, see, is in the foreground when I fatten it up. And I go up. Then as the paint runs out of the brush, that's when I go to the next layer of trees. Because, see, I don't have much paint left, and I don't want much left. Now, we will switch to our script brush probably next week when we put the smaller limbs and things in there. And in fact, I'm going to put a little bit of a canopy limb off of this one hanging back down to sort of focus right through here. That's using our artistic license, which is my favorite thing to do. Okay, now again, folks, even here on these trees, remember the 3 P's, don't piddle, play, or putter. Please don't spend a lot of time overworking these because you can get yourself in a mess. I like this little clump here. There's a little clump right back in through here, and I think that's a great spot to put these trees. So I'm going to put a few more kind of clumped in here. And these are literally the trunks for trees that we haven't painted yet, okay? Like the dogwood, some of the oaks that are blooming, and the pecan trees, and there's a number of other trees there. Okay, over here. Now remember, if you're having trouble with this bigger brush making skinny limbs, don't be afraid to switch to a smaller brush. It's not a big deal. I just have learned how to use these brushes. I just feel a little bit more relaxed. My paintings are not as stiff if I use a larger brush. Okay. Now I think just about got all the limbs in here. A couple more over here. Let's take a quick look. I think there's one more that I think we need to put here. Then there's a larger one also right here that's very important in the painting. That one really adds, kind of like this one, that intermediate depth. So let's take the umber and the blue and the little touch of the alizarin and get this one in. And it's a fairly good size tree. Well, we got to keep moving here because I can't believe we're already running down on time. It seems like we're just getting started here. I don't know about you, but that's my biggest frustration in doing this is all the time that passes so quickly. We don't just get started and we got to quit. But we are making significant progress at any rate. Now the next thing I'm going to have you do just very quickly is just go ahead and block in this trunk just so you can see the proportioning and a little bit more about how it creates some depth. So just take a little blue and your burnt umber and maybe a little bit of alizarin and just simply dry brush in the shape of this tree. Now notice, folks, this is a very large tree, so don't be afraid to make it big. I've noticed that a lot of us kind of we get stage fright whenever we start doing large things in the front of the painting because we have a tendency to think we're going to ruin it. And that's not the case. Well, you could ruin it, but generally speaking, it's just more fear that gets you then actually making a mistake. Come on up here. And again, there's a couple of nice limbs that you don't see here, but that are there on this tree. And even if they weren't there, they need to be there. So as an artist, you can use your license to do that. Now you don't have to come all the way down to the bottom, although this tree does do that. We'll do that later because we have all these azaleas that go in here. So I just come down about this far, get your proportion right, your shape like you want it. And already, just doing that tree, I want you to notice something. With all the contrast we have in there now, look how nice that stands out and pushes that background back. That's just an incredible thing. So that's really exciting to see all this stuff starting to develop now. Okay, finish blocking this in. And notice there's a couple of knot holes. I love these knot holes. Let's block this one in. And we'll exaggerate that later. And there's a little bulge on this side. Make this tree just a little wider. Now notice the background now is kind of blending into it, which softens the tree. Get this on up here. Make sure our proportion's good. Now it's important that you understand when you do a tree this size that the tree gradually tapers as it grows up. These little ones they taper too, as you can see. But this one specifically, it's wider and it gradually gets a little bit smaller as it goes up. Don't make it a major shift from thick to thin. You see, it's gradual. And if this tree continues to grow, it keeps going way up until it gets very narrow at the top, okay? So that's where you're at on this. Just be sure that it gradually tapers. And every limb that joins on, of course, is a little wider where it joins on. Then it also gradually tapers as it goes out. Then this tree limb will come up and then hang back down, and it'll form a little pocket here where I will focus. Well, as usual, folks, they're giving me the sign that we're going to have to slow this thing down and stop. So I'm going to give you a little homework assignment. I want you to go ahead and make sure you get all of your trees in there, okay, or at least the trunks. Block in the large tree, get the proportion right, get everything sorted to this point. Now what we're going to do is go in and block in the leaves. Now we got the underpainting. Now the leaves that cover these trees. All right, now we're going to mix that color up. It's not this real dark green. It's sort of a color between this light green and the dark green, okay? So let's go down to our palette right off the bat here and begin mixing our first color for the session. The first thing we're going to do now, remember we had three colors and we want to keep these. This is the dark green, the yellow green, and then the more green that we've used. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to find me a clean spot here and we're going to mix sort of an intermediate green that we can use for this. So let's take a little bit of sap green here. Okay. Now to that I want you to add a little bit of, well, let's say just equal amounts in fact of your cadmium yellow pale. Mix this real good. And you'll notice now it's a very pure green. Okay. Now that's exactly that green right there. It's a little lighter than this, but it's darker than this, and it'll give us a nice range. And this is where we start, you might say, freshening up the painting. The colors become a little cleaner, a little bit brighter, and as we progress for the next 2 or 3 sessions, you'll end up with just this outstanding array of color. Switching to your number 10 or 12 bristle brush now. This is where you want to have a paper towel or a rag handy so you can wipe it out very often. You don't have to clean it in the water. But right on the end of your brush there, like that, you take your green. Let's come across here so you can see this. You'll notice now this is springtime, so it's not just a solid covering, but there is a canopy here of leaves, and you're going to start like this by just barely touching the canvas. Now this time you want to be a little more specific. Up until now, folks, remember I've been cautioning you about not being too careful or too specific because it gets really monotonous. Now you have to be a little more specific. You don't have a choice. Now all I'm doing is reloading. But you want to start shaping your trees now, giving them a little bit of form, making them look more like trees. Then we'll come back after we get all the leaves on and we'll begin putting in the smaller limbs that will sort of finish out the trees. At the same time now, keep this very nice, light and airy. Light and airy. Yeah, I like putting a little over here. I think this would be good. Down in here. Now come right in through here. Now keep in mind now, this is just the green part. We've got the red buds, the dogwoods, and of course the azaleas. This is just the green, and there's a lot of green in this painting, but because of all the reds and the pinks and the complementary colors, boy, this is, I'll tell you, an artist's paradise here. And you can go out on this park almost any time of the year, and it's just covered with photographers and artists working on location. It's an incredible place. I used to, when I was growing up around this place, spend a lot of time there when I was a little boy, climbing up and down the rocks and playing in the water and in the mud. My mom wasn't always real happy when I came home because I created a lot of extra laundry for her, but nonetheless, we had a good time. And it brings back a lot of childhood memories when I go there. Notice now, 2 or 3 things are happening when you do this. When you first start out, you have the color on just like I did there, and you see it's stronger, okay? And as you progress dabbing your brush here, the paint starts to, run out, and that's how you create those softer, lighter values. So you work all the way through, and as you start running out of paint, you see you create another value, a lighter, softer color. So you can get a good variety that way. You get some of the darker ones and the lighter ones, and it really is effective. Now remember, your canvas is probably a little drier, so you're not going to pick up much background like I am. Mine's still wet because remember I mentioned to you, we're not trying to fool you here on the show. I paint these paintings one right after another. The sessions here are not a week apart like you're seeing them on TV. It would be impossible to do it that way. So we paint these right on one right after another. So my background's still wet. And that's how I can get along here and create this soft look. You may have to add a little white to yours to get that softer. There's a little advantage to both ways, the wet on wet and the wet on dry. So we both have our advantages and disadvantages. As I keep moving across here, building up these beautiful, beautiful textures. And also, I'm letting my background fade through, the blues, the yellows. Now you can see why we don't ever finish anything in the foreground, because see this big tree now sort of in the way. And if you go over it too much, you end up spreading the dark color out there, and you don't want to do that. So be very careful when you come over here. Now this tree right here, I'm going to make a little stronger. Yeah, that's good. Excellent. Yeah, I think we've just about got enough. Let's put a little bit more up here on this one. Yeah, that's good. Now be sure you always, whenever you put this on, don't overwork it. I'm keep reminding you of the 3 P's. Now, it's the motto of the show, don't piddle, play, or putter, but just don't overdo this. Just do enough to blend it and shape it and then stop. But if you just keep pounding it and pounding it and pounding it and blending it, it turns to mud very, very quickly. Okay, now rinse your brush out this time. And if you keep in mind, remember now, the background, there are a lot of reddish colors. You can see some of the soft pinks, the reds back into the trees where the red buds and the pink dogwoods and so forth and so forth are. So what you're going to do now, using the same brush, come down and take your alizarin crimson, and I want them to come down here to the palette if they would. And to that alizarin, now see, start with the alizarin by itself. Now there's a little mud in there from that, but that's okay. Then take the middle green, not the dark one, but the middle one here, just a smidgen of it. Just to kill that from being such a bright reddish color. Then come back up here and scatter this color like this within the background, just in a few places. Now, on our last couple of sessions, as I mentioned, we will put the pure bright colors that give this painting its snap and its sunlight. Right now, again, we're just simply underpainting. And everywhere there's a red patch of color, whether it be the azaleas or a dogwood or a redbud, you've got to get this color in there. And then we'll come back and cap it out later with the brighter reds and the pinks. All right, let's go to the other side now. Some right through here. I want to do a little bit like that right here on this tree. Also, what this does is it sort of gives you a little texture. These azaleas, as you know, have a wonderful flower on them, and from a distance, of course, they just look like little clumps, but they're beautiful, pretty good size petals. We have some in our backyard, and they're just really just beautiful. But from a distance, they're kind of clumped together. So that's kind of what we're doing. See, we're creating the little clumps. They grow in big batches. We even have festivals up here, the azalea festivals, because we have so many. And azaleas aren't really hard to grow, but they need a lot of shade. They need moisture, sort of an acidy soil, and good drainage. So if you got those 3 components, you can grow azaleas. They like the cooler weather. They don't like sun. You can have a little sun. Okay. And let's do just a little bit over here on the right-hand side. Now what I'm doing again, just putting more or less the texture than we are anything else. Okay, I think we're just about there. A little bit right in there. Ah, yes, already it's starting to come alive, and we're not even very far along yet. Okay, now then, in the water, we need to go ahead and begin creating a few things here that will help it come alive. You will reflect some of the trunks, so very quickly, with your number 6 bristle brush, taking a little bit of the umber, and you may want to add a little white or a little of that blue color to it. If your background is dry, and it probably is, then you just kind of wiggle your brush like this, just very gently. This one, it kind of hangs out like this. Probably we'll see just a little bit of this one. But the secret here, folks, is not to so much duplicate things, but just get the sort of the basic layout. See, already that makes that water look a little bit wetter. Okay, now that you've got sort of the basics of all of this underpainted, everything's starting to fall into shape, what we're going to begin doing now is highlighting the rock formations. Now let's come down to our palette and let's go ahead and begin that process. We're going to mix up a couple of colors here for that. Now get your palette knife, and I'm going to make my sunshine color here. I'm going to take white. Now the first color we're going to use is going to be sort of an odd thing to use. You just take a little bit of ultramarine blue in the white and a little burnt sienna, and you'll create sort of a grayish color. That's the first thing we're going to do. You see there? It's a very light sort of a gray. Now I'm going to use my palette knife to do some of this, and I'm not going to put any water in this because I want it to be a little stiffer. But I am mixing it good. Just mixing it in itself kind of helps soften it. All right, now you don't have to use a knife. In fact, I'll use the knife and the brush a little bit. But let's come over here and study our photograph right quick. Now they're going to be running footage, of course, from time to time here as we go through this show also, and you're going to see some of these rocks a little closer up from time to time. But you can see the little sunlight. These are the bluish gray highlight. Then you get up here where the sun's a little stronger. You're hitting more of the true yellowish orange highlight, okay? Sort of the true sunshine color. But starting here, take your knife and let's just locate the basics of where the rocks are. Now don't worry about it, just do it. And then I'll show you how to take your brush and come back and form them a little bit later. And the reason I like to use the knife, folks, because most of us when we use a brush in the beginning, we get so particular and so perfected. You know, we want this to look just like a photograph. I promise you it's not going to happen. So use your knife and it creates sort of spontaneous, free-flowing rocks that you can come back and refine with your brush. But if you try to refine them instantly with your brush, you're going to get in trouble every time. I guess the funniest story, and I think I've told this before, is many times I'll be in an art class holding a seminar, and we'll start on the rocks, and people will get their brush out and they'll make a stroke and it'll look like a rock, but it may be a round rock or a square rock or whatever it is. But most of the time they're a round rock, and that stroke is so easy, you just repeat it and it looks like a whole herd of turtles walking across the canvas, or a herd of porpoises or something. You get one stroke down that you're real proud of and you get carried away with it. Well, that again is why I like to do this, is because it makes my rocks have different shapes, because you can't control the knife as good as you can the brush. So it's better that it kind of controls you a little bit here. Okay. There's also here, I'm going to turn this a little bit. All right. Now you can see I've kind of blocked those in, and even just like that, they look pretty decent. Now, I'm going to switch to my number 4 or number 6 bristle brush, and I'm going to have to rinse this one out. Okay. Then take your brush, and using this color, you need to hold your brush back. Now notice all the rocks, there's a bunch of them, they're layering on top of each other. Let's start down here with these smaller ones in the foreground. Now don't misunderstand something, we will probably come back on some of these and put little darker shadows behind them if need be. That will happen fairly often, in fact. Now over here, there's a nice big rock. Quick stroke. Now the fewer the strokes, folks, the better your rocks will be. Okay, that's very important to understand. See just little touches now and then. There's a bigger rock right there. Now, see already how neat that looks? A couple of smaller ones here. Okay, now up here we begin the process of highlighting these. Now then, come right on across. I want you to know something though too. I'm wiping my brush every time I reload, because then I don't pick up any paint that's behind. Now again, yours is probably dry, but the dark parts may still be wet in some areas where you just maybe put fresh paint on. But the dark part also may be, if it's not wet, it'll be good and dry because it dries faster than most colors. But a lot of you just got the rocks painted the dark part. And so, like mine, it's real wet, so I have to be careful. Again, remember these rocks are not all big boulders. These are more subtly rounded rocks. They're just not real big. They're more of a flat topped rock. They do have a rounded shape to them because of the water running over them over the years, and they've kind of rounded off, but they're not too round. Okay. A couple of spots in here where I want to put a little stronger highlight, like right here. Now, after you've got most of your highlights in place and you're satisfied with the location of your rocks, the next thing you want to do is come back with your dark color. Now, what I'm going to have you do is just take pure ultramarine blue this time. Just take pure blue. Don't panic. Unless if yours is real dry, you can add a little touch of burnt sienna to it. But what I'm going to do now is come in behind my rocks, like this, see? And I'm going to three-dimensionalize them. And the blue adds a sort of a cool touch to the rock. I don't mean the word cool in the slang form. I'm talking about the actual color cool or the temperature cool. All right? So we're making a cool rock here because we need a little bit of contrast, not only in color, but in the actual atmosphere of the painting. And if you paint it all too warm, I think the painting gets a little monotonous. So the blue, just subtle, but it adds a little bit of coolness to the painting and also repeats a little bit of the bluish tone that we have in the sky. So it's a nice thing to do. And we want to do nice things for our painting once in a while, so don't be afraid to do this. You see, I'm just putting that little swish right underneath the rock, and I'm softening my edges. Now, don't misunderstand. You can come back and use umber if you want to, and to get some darker areas, which I will do to get some of those real deep dark pockets. In fact, right now I'm going to take pure umber and right back up in through here where this waterfall, so to speak, turns the corner and goes into the bushes. It's very, very dark. Now, this is one of the few times where you're not seeing me use the dioxazine purple, which is one of my favorite colors, but we're replacing it this time with the alizarin crimson. So you get a similar effect, okay? So don't think we're eliminated the alizarin from our palette. We're just not using it in this particular painting. Although you can. And between now and our next session, I may change my mind and find a place to use it because, I'm very passionate about the use of purple. Now I'm coming along here, working this into the water. Now this is important. I'm going to start softening it down into the water now to create sort of the reflection of the rocks, but I'm using a horizontal stroke back and forth, and wiggling it. Don't be afraid of it. Very dark right along this edge here. See, I'm going back and forth very gently. As a matter of fact, there's a nice deep dark pocket right here I think would be nice. Keeping in mind that all of these dark contrasting colors is what gives the painting its depth and its character. Okay? Now, you've got most of the areas blocked in there. We will come back and add more highlight as needed, but we want to get some trickles of water coming over there too, which we'll do probably in our next session. Okay? A couple of darker things here. Okay. Now a little bit here. And we're going to get ready for some of the fun stuff. It's been fun already. but I mean real fun stuff. Okay, we got to do a little bit of work on this rock here, because this one is more of a boulder type. Okay, now you're going to take that highlight color, rinse your brush out now. Remember, we'll come back with our sunlight as we do when we put the highlights on the flowers and the trees. We'll also do that to the rocks. It'll be more of an orangish, yellowish highlight. So don't think we're not going to do that. We just don't need to just yet. But I want you to take the same grayish color and you put a little swish in the water like this to suggest the highlight. Like that. See, I'm just going to turn my brush sideways. And that just really adds that really wet effect. And you need to do a little bit of that down here. The water. All of these things are critically important. Now, in between some of these rocks and things, folks, we will pick up, and in fact, we might just do a little bit of it right now. Take some of your sort of a middle green, the lime green, and this is what you'll do. You'll flip up like this, little bits of the green in between the rocks. This sort of helps them to settle down. And it breaks up the monotony of just rock after rock, and just this little bit of color really is nice. Don't overdo it, just a little. I think it's important to be there. Okay. Yeah, see how that kind of settles that down in there? I just love that. Now where our water will come through, it'll come through here behind this rock, and it will kind of we'll dry brush it down over this rock, kind of fork out and kind of fall down in here in different places. Now what we're going to do is go ahead and begin the process of putting in the water. There's a little trickle of water. You can't see it real well here, but they're going to run some footage here throughout the show off and on, and you'll be able to see it. You can even hear it sometimes just kind of trickling over. Now remember in the beginning painting we mixed up this light blue sky color. Well, you should, if you don't have any of that still with you, let's go down here to the palette. I still have some. And I also want to keep you informed that, remember, I work on these paintings simultaneously, so I don't have a lot of time between them where they dry. So I still have some of this light blue color mixed up. You can mix some too, just simply by taking white with a teeny touch of ultramarine blue. And see, it's just a real pale, sort of a powder blue. Now take your number 6 bristle brush, and it has to be clean, and load your brush fairly heavy. Okay, see I'm loading it fairly heavy. Then come up here and using your brush back from a distance. Now, it's very important that you put the paint on in a thick, dry brush effect. Okay, and you dry brush sort of the effect of the water falling over the rocks. See, I'm turning my brush sort of sideways, just letting the weight of the brush create this little trickle of water coming down the rocks. I'm just barely touching it. Now wipe your brush so that the paint will stay fresh. And when you get to the bottom here, you're going to go ahead and put some horizontal strokes of this bluish color to sort of suggest the water as it splashes and goes into the main body. Wipe your brush. This is not a major thing, folks, so don't spend a lot of time worrying about it. Just sort of suggest the water here. This is just a simple suggestion. But it's an important thing in that, without there, the painting will look kind of unfinished. Really kind of dangerous to say something's not important. Every part of the painting has to be done properly, so I guess every part is important. It's just that some are not worth spending that extra amount of time on when they just need a simple stroke or a simple touch. But they all are important. Now I'm just going to keep working my way out here. Now, as I mentioned in the first show, the body of water that you see here is much smaller than the one you'll see on the footage they're running. and on some of the other reference material. I just happen to like the background better. It's easy to enlarge the water, so that's where we get our artistic license going and have a lot of fun with that. Now I'm just sort of softening this across there, coming down here, making sure everything is tied together, and I think we're in business here. Yeah, excellent. Isn't that beautiful? Just that little bit of water. Now when it dries good, or even right now in fact if you want, you can take pure white and put some little caps, just like that. Just a little smidgen of white, just a little cap on the top, and that will give it its three-dimensional form. Just put it right on the top. It makes it sparkle slightly. Yes, excellent. I'm going to say this again. I mentioned it last time. Whenever you're painting like this, folks, you know, painting is frustrating sometimes, and you know that, I know that. We're all familiar with the frustration that painting can cause sometimes. So what I like to do once in a while is pat myself on the back. Now don't get too carried away, because you don't want to build yourself up to something that you're not. But whenever you do something that you like or that you feel like you've accomplished, and just give yourself a little pat on the back and kind of stand back and admire it for a minute. Because it doesn't take long for reality to set in and realize that you're just a painter, okay? And the canvases can be pretty hard on you sometimes. Now we've got the water there, we've got the waterfall moving. Now then, the next step here is probably going to be a little scary, but it's not that bad. Well, let me just quickly show you what's going to happen. This foreground right here, okay, where these azaleas are, we're going to block that in next. And that's a very, very important part of this painting. The way that's going to happen, let's go down to our palette, take your knife, and I want you to take the alizarin crimson, and I'm going to put a little bit more out there, I think. The alizarin crimson is a very, very important color in this painting. We're not using the purple this time. Now to that, I want you to first mix it, good. I want you to add a little bit of blue to it. Don't worry if you get a little green in it. In fact, we may add a little green. But by itself, you can see up here, I'll show you something. It's a fairly deep, dark color, all right, which is good for the underpainting. And then we put the pink on top of that, which will give us our finished look. So now that you've put a little bit of blue in it, you mixed it real good. Now we're going to take your number 10 bristle brush, and you're going to dry brush on this color. Now, the area, you can't see it real well, but right underneath, you'll see really deep, dark pockets, okay? Well, you have to have a dark background in order for the contrast to show. So I'll just start like this, very similar to what we did in the background earlier. Let's get these in here. Don't put the paint on too thick. Okay, I'm going to just build the basic shape here of these azaleas in this foreground. Now this is like, the reason this is scary is because this is a very intense color and we're covering a fairly large area. But I want you to notice there's a nice composition to this. We have this tree that comes down here. This is not just a straight line. So when you put this in here, folks, be sure that you give it good contour. Also, this tree that comes in here with the little light green leaves here and there just adds a beautiful touch to this. Okay, now see, this comes right up and through here. Just kind of give this nice shape on the edge. Notice how I'm working diligently. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but I am very cautious to get a good shape to the edge here. It's very important for the finishing of this. Now, this part's got to be done just as I'm doing it if you want to have good success with this. Now it's important that this comes up and you form a little pocket here of water and then a larger body of water here. See, I'm gently softening these edges. Very, very important. And also, if you'll notice, by pulling in those edges there like that, if your background's still a little wet, you know, it's going to soften them, make them kind of pink already. But if not, then you may have to add just a little touch of white. Okay, I'll come right on across here. Right like this. See, I'm being very cautious but very quick in putting in this background. Now the reason this is turning pink here is because the white in that water is still wet and it makes it lighter. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, it's very nice. Okay, now down in here, the paint's pretty dark. So I'm going to keep building this. And when we put the petals of the flowers on, we may use a palette knife, we may use a smaller brush, because you have to put the paint on fairly thick so it'll stay nice and clean and bright. Okay, now very quickly, let's also take our number 6 bristle brush, and let's pull our tree trunk on down. Now that I see where we're going with it, just take the pure burnt umber and just pull this trunk right on down. It comes right on down into this part of the painting. Okay, good. That's about right. Then you come back with your dark purple, alizarin color. And work right into the edge of your tree trunk and around it. And it's okay if it blends, because see, it's real dark down in this pocket. You see, so that's really all we're doing is just taking the alizarin, and as it blends into the brown, it creates that dark pocket. All right. Keep building this. This is why you need to mix up a pretty good batch of this, folks. Okay, now then what we're going to do as we come down here a little bit further is we're going to begin adding some the greens. There's a few greens in here, and we don't want to get too many greens, but we need something to kind of break up the monotony of just being a solid mass of red. Although we do repeat this color in a few places, it's still a little strong right now. So in just a minute we're going to put in some greens. That will be helpful in making this have a more complementary color scheme. Okay, now let's leave a little bit of this open there for the green. And while you have this color on your brush, I'm going to suggest now that we pick some of the areas where we want the azaleas to be, pretty outstanding. And one of the spots, of course, is here. So you need to come in with some of this a little darker in some places. And basically, you're not adding more. You're just now shaping them better. And you're adding the color a little richer. Okay. See, I'm gently blending this into the greens. In here. And I'm actually going to form more, you might say, clumps that you can see the mass buildup of these azaleas through here. Really, really exciting. Every step puts us that much closer to the snap that we're looking for. And you're going to be amazed on the final session what this does. This is just going to blow you out of the water. Now right here is a beautiful arrangement of azaleas right behind this little waterfall. And again, as they run the footage from time to time, please take a good look at it and concentrate on it and think about it, because, you know, again, if you've had a chance, you may have done some research like I mentioned to you early on, and maybe you've got some trees that you want. Don't be afraid to rearrange this to fit your own needs, because everyone's going to want something a little different. In fact, even the azaleas here, you know, they have many different ones. They've got the bright red ones. They got sort of a dusty rose color. They got the pink. They got the purple, white ones. There's just an incredible array of different colors. Now, got that pretty much blocked in. We're going to switch now to our script brush. Yay, we're finally getting to the script brush. That's the brush that a lot of us don't like too well, but I love it. Now then, using your number 4 script brush, again with plenty of water, we're going to mix some color here using our burnt umber here. So just come down here with a little umber, mix this water in here, get a nice sort of an inky mixture. Can work it into my brush good. Now we're not going to overdo this, folks, because it's easy to overdo it, all right? But what I want you to do here is, you can see up here, it looks a little unfinished, and there's a lot of limbs here, and I mean a whole lot. You can see them coming across. These are coming down from this tree, hanging down, which we'll put in. But there's a whole lot of small limbs, okay? So now we will come in. And I think they'd like me to turn this sideways so you can see this better. See, I'm dry brushing just right up through here. This is a good one right here to get some nice limbs on them. I'll put a couple of small ones at the base. They come out. These add a nice touch to the painting because of the contrast that they add as well. But they do more than that. They make the painting look more complete. Okay. Now see, I'm going to let some of the limbs come up and hang down. One of the habits most of us get into that's not always good is sometimes we get in the habit of repeating the same basic stroke over and over and over. In other words, you may get started, like I mentioned to you before about the rocks and the basic shape, repeating it, or tree limb. Sometimes we get in the habit of doing a certain tree limb and they all look the same. Well, that gets you in serious trouble, because then your painting becomes very bland and monotonous and just not fun to look at. Okay. Now, this is something we can spend a lot of time on. I don't want to bore you with this, but I want to get you sort of off on the right foot on this. You can spend whatever time you need to getting these limbs in here, because there are a bunch of them. Okay, now I'm going to pull this big one down here, which is an important limb in the painting. Very important, in fact. See, it's going to come down like this, and it sort of helps to create the focal point in the painting. There's a few limbs hanging down. Now, keep in mind that this is springtime, and some of the trees, like your pecan trees, they're late leafers. And this, by the way, is not a pecan tree. This is an oak. But your pecan trees, and there were quite a few of those, they leaf out late. You just pull these on out, creating a nice sort of an umbrella or a canopy type of situation here. Boy, look at that nice contrast against those light green trees back there. Isn't that beautiful? It just adds such a nice touch to this. Now then, move over here to the right-hand side, or I mean the left-hand side. This tree here needs to have a couple of limbs on it that are coming out. Now we will come back and put some final highlights on these leaves to help settle down these trunks and these limbs. But you gotta, everything again, like I mentioned before, is a process. Everything has got something happening to it, okay? And it takes step after step. There's lots of limbs still in there that we're just not even getting close to yet. And like I said, you need to take the time on your own to take it as far as you want to take it, because sometimes in here we just don't have the time. And I don't want to do a lot of stuff that's so repetitive that it bores you. Because a lot of this stuff I don't even do at home in my studio. I'll stop and do something else and come back to it because it gets kind of boring. So you may do the same thing. Now, there's a few limbs here. You want some different angles, like I said. Kind of branch out different directions. Okay, you see how that works? Isn't that just beautiful? Now then, we've got to go back to the water. We're going to water for a while. Take your number 6 bristle brush and rinse it out real good. We need to get just a little more darkness, dark contrast in the water to pick up the darkness of like this tree and some of the other things in here and even some of the lighter greens. We'll start first with the dark green mixture, and you need to come in here like this, using a horizontal stroke. Begin smudging in the location of this tree here, like so. Now notice I'm being very loose, reloading my brush. It's fresh paint. Oops, almost lost it. Don't want that to happen. You know, they make little fasteners to hold these on, but they always get in the way, so I have to always take the chance of losing the canvas, and we don't lose them too often. Okay, just keep dry brushing this in. Again, make it kind of airy. See, I'm leaving little pockets of light come through so it doesn't get real monotonous. Now you can see some of this lime green, so I'm going to rinse my brush. And we get a little bit of this lime green in the water, just a little stronger than what we have. And then, of course, we will reflect some of the azaleas in the water as well. Okay. Well, folks, we're running short on time again. Okay. Now we're cooking. Isn't that exciting how this is starting to develop? Now rinse your brush kind of quickly here, and let's get in a few, or just a little bit of the azalea underpainting color, this dark crimson. And yes, you want to put some right here, a little here. You don't have to get too carried away, but just get enough to show the color in the water. Okay. Now notice how I'm being very selective, because I don't want to smudge it and blend it where it turns to mud. I'm just trying to duplicate or accent the water with some of these colors in here. Now here's a good spot right here. Put a little in here. I'm going to try to get this done before we have to quit, and you can go ahead and carry on if you need to finish it up. But you've got to get these, every color that's above, you have to get in the water as well, okay? And then, of course, I'll show you how we put the ripples in the water and all the things that make the water stand out, including strengthening the reflection of the tree trunk. See, it's a little darker, we made it, so you should do that here too. Make this just a little bit darker. And of course, you've got the little limbs and things that kind of branch out. So, you got a lot of things you can do that will help accent and identify the water a little bit more. So anyway, let me get the photograph here again and make sure you see we're very close to this actually in terms of its content and its continuity. We have opened up the water a little bit here. What we're going to do at this point now is begin the process. We're going to finish up our foreground area here. We're going to finish up the tree, starting putting the highlights on the bark and all those little things that give this painting a little bit more interest. Then we'll start some intermediate highlighting. Now let me make sure you understand what intermediate highlighting is. In any painting, it doesn't matter if it's acrylic or oil, you have three basic stages. Now there are many things in between there, but there are three basic stages. You have what you call your underpainting, you have your intermediate highlight, which is the highlight that is sort of the in between the bright and the dull. And then at the very end, you have what you call your accent highlighting, okay? Now your accent highlighting is the highlighting that I was talking to you about that gives you the sunlight in the painting. You may end up with all your intermediate highlights, which are a subtle highlight, but then the accent highlights will really give it its snap, and that's what we'll be shooting for on the very final program. All right, let's move on over here now to the left-hand corner of the painting. And what we're going to do, and I'm going to throw you for a loop here, I don't mean to do that too often, but this is such a special painting. There's a color down here that I want you to see that we normally don't have in our palette. This is called Permanent Green Light. Now it's a pretty standard color. It's a very pure natural green. It's right here. I don't know if they can close in. I hope they can, where you can see that in the end of my palette here. It's a beautiful, beautiful green. And we're going to use that now to start adding some of the stronger, richer greens as a sort of an intermediate highlight. And we'll start over here first using my number 6 bristle brush. And let's kind of go through here like this and throw in some of the green colors. Now don't be afraid to kind of blend it or mix it right in with this and sort of create a soft blended edge, so to speak, like this. Okay. I'm moving very quickly, and I'm using quick, short, choppy, sort of comma-like strokes. Now this is a very, very important part of the painting. As insignificant as it may seem, it really and truly is important. Okay, just keep coming through here like this. Okay, I'll put a few down in through here. Now, it's wonderful because if you do much studying and understanding painting, this is our complementary color scheme, and it's full glory here, you might say. Green and red are true opposites or complements to each other. And what I mean by opposites, if you use a color wheel, you understand that the complement is directly opposite its, companion color on the other side of the wheel. So if you have red on one side, you're going to have green on the other side. So that's how you know to use your complement. Like purple, the complement to purple is yellow. Complement to orange is blue. The complement to any color on your color wheel will be opposite. So keep that in mind if you're trying to decide what's best to put in your painting. Remember to use the complements. Okay. Now that kind of gives us just a little bit of a greenish sparkle there for that corner. Now we're going to come back here and I'm going to show you a few things. Now we do have a lot of the lighter, more vibrant yellowish greens in there, which signify the springtime, which is what this is, of course. But we also have some of the richer, deeper greens like I was just doing there. So throughout the painting now we're going to sort of hit and miss, and we begin putting in, these are the true intermediate things, but you see it's a richer, more vibrant green in terms of its color, not so much that it's sunlight, but it is an intermediate color, like so. All right, so that's a nice spot to put some. You're not going to put it everywhere, just certain places. Like for instance, right up here is a good spot. Notice there's a little of it right through here, just on top of this little rock formation. Again, folks, we're not trying to duplicate or copy the photograph necessarily, and as they run the footage on the show here, you're going to see some of these colors probably a little bit better than what I've got here in the photograph. So take a good look at them. Okay, there's some good spots over here. Now don't just make a splotch of color here and a splotch of color there, but use it pretty much all over your painting. In other words, tie it together. Don't put a patch, a patch, a patch, and a patch. You know, like for instance, I'll come over here on this side as though this little area runs behind the tree and is all united together. That adds a nice little color here that's a little richer. Now, I get really sort of lost into this when I start doing this stage of the painting, and the reason is because I'm paying a whole lot more attention now at this stage than I am in the beginning, because I don't want to do something that will be wrong, so to speak. I want to get all my color schemes in order. Like for instance, up here now, I'm going to come in with some of this green, and I'm going to dab little highlights now. Notice this. I'm dabbing, creating actual leaf-like patterns. And even though this is a very rich, deep, sort of a dark green, in comparison to the green we mixed, you see it's vibrant. So that's how we get away with it being the intermediate highlight, because even though it's a fairly rich, deep color itself, against the other underpainting colors, it stands out as being a more vibrant color. So go ahead and use it now and get some of this in here. And keep loading fresh paint. Now again, I have to mention that those of you that are painting along with us, if you're doing it literally week by week, as some of you are, you have to remember that your painting is probably dry, okay? Because your paints will dry enough from week to week to, make it a little, not completely dry, but kind of sticky. I paint these simultaneously, all in sort of one sweep at a time, maybe 2 or 3 days we'll do painting after painting. So my backgrounds are still wet. You need to understand that this technique that I'm using is the wet on wet technique. Yours will be a little more wet on dry. So you don't have quite the problem of your background blending into the paint that I have. Now you may want to take yours and do it later, and some of you are doing that. You're taking notes and then paint your painting later, and I think that's a good way to do it too, because it's real hard to follow along in the show. I know it is. So if you're painting wet on wet, remember, always wipe your brush more often so that you don't pick up the background color and create mud. All right, and just keep moving along here. See, I'm being very loose and free, and look where I'm holding my brush, folks. I'm not getting too carried away here with real detailed strokes, and I'm not getting too close to the canvas. Now see how exciting that is? Oh, that's just starting to really bring out that background. I love this. Okay, let's come up here and put a little bit up here. Now I want you to notice also something. I've jumped on you many times about keeping the stroke soft with a feathered edge. Well, you've got to understand that's what you're doing now, is creating a nice soft feathered edge, so that when you put these leaves on here, they're not just big, strong blobs of color, okay? A little over here. Now the fun is beginning. This is when I really start getting excited about this type of painting, because you can start seeing every stroke now create a different look. Come over here. Keep coming up this direction. Okay, I'm going to come down here a little lower. I see this is an important area right here to put some of this stronger, more vivid green, especially when you get against this light yellowish green, because it creates that real subtle contrast, and it really does help with the spring type effect. Any of these greens are good. And you can even use different ones than I've used. It doesn't really matter. Maybe in your part of the country you have more of an orangish type green or something. We have very light, airy greens here. They're not real strong, except when you get into the summer. Then they turn brown about August. So it's good to catch it right now. Okay, let's come up here. And actually, this pecan tree, this oak tree is leafing out, but because it's so tall, the leaves are up high, and you can't really see it on the photograph. So we'll go ahead and leaf this using our artistic license just as a practical matter. Now, as you watch the footage up there, you're going to see now all these things that we're doing really come into play here, okay? And it's going to be important for you as a painter, an artist, to go out on location whenever you can and do your own research as often as you can. You'll learn a lot more by studying actually nature than you will working from a photograph, although you have to do a little bit of both. Okay, now I'm using the chisel corner, what we call the corner of the brush, and that kind of helps to soften and create a much better effect here. Okay, now we're going here. I think that's probably enough of that color. And that gets a little bit repetitive. And now then, once again, as a practical matter, let's take our photograph here, if I can find it. I keep losing it. You don't have a whole lot of yellows in this particular painting. Most of them are yellowish green. And that's what we're going to do now, is make a little cleaner yellowish green. So take your palette knife, and using the yellow and the new color we just put on there today, the permanent green light, let's just take a little bit of permanent green light right here. And I'm going to re-wipe my knife here because I got a little bit too much red on it. You don't want to get too much red in this, or any, because it'll turn it kind of dull. Now take the yellow and the green, and you're going to get a really little bit richer color than what we mixed up. It's similar, but it's a brighter, more cheerful kind of green. Now I'm going to use my palette knife to do this part. Now see, that's a nice, beautiful green right there. See, it's cleaner than these three. When you use the sap green or the hooker's green in the acrylic, it's got a little red in it, so you're going to get a little bit of a muddier green. But I like that, except when we're doing this kind of work. Now let's take your palette knife, using just the end of it now, okay? Just the end of it. Okay, for instance, see these little sections of green? You come in like this now, using your palette knife, and that's how you create that nice, vivid highlight that looks textured like leaves. Now, you could use a brush, but it doesn't go on quite as clean. Now, what you're going to do is hit and miss. See little spots where the sun might be peeking through a tree, coming behind a tree, through some bushes, and that's how you get these little bright spots, is the sun filtering through something, and especially right up and through here against these azaleas. And don't forget, these azaleas that we have here are only the underpainting. We haven't got to the bright part yet. That'll come in next time. Right now we're doing the bright part of the greens. Next time we'll be putting in the highlights for all the flowers. That's what's going to be exciting. But this is exciting too. See how nice and textured that is? It's beautiful. And it's fun to work with a knife. It kind of creates a nice texture that you can't get with a brush. It's something different, a different tool that you haven't used before. I really like a knife. Now, one thing you have to notice though about knife work is you have, I guess you might say, very little control over it, okay? So you need to stand back and look at it once in a while, because that's what creates really the finished effect, is distance. Up close, it just looks like smudges of paint. I know when I was growing up as a young artist, studying artist paintings, I never could understand how sloppy a painting looked up close, and then every time I got back, it just all fell into place. Well, that's what makes a good painting. And see, I'm putting that little bright green right back through here. All the area behind this section is that bright green. Wonderful color. And the texture is just outstanding. And so you just kind of scumble it on. Have some fun with it. I'm going to go up a little higher right up in through here. Just reload. And now see that, if I don't know how close they can get where maybe you can see this and maybe you can't. But this texture is really on there fairly strong. And there's a reason for that. Especially in oil painting, the texture creates a much more vivid snap of color. It's cleaner, it's brighter. If you just blend it and smooth it out, it turns dull on you. So that's why we use a knife sometimes. And even if you use a brush, put it on quick and thick and leave it alone. Remember the 3 P's. Don't piddle, play, or putter. All right, just keep going. Let's take a couple minutes here, and I'll shut up for a minute. We'll put a few more green spots, and then we'll move on. I'm going to even put a little down here. And then when we put the flowers in here, this will just really be outstanding. Now remember, these are really sort of the accent highlights that we talked about earlier. Nice texture. You can see those little bits of highlight coming through there. In fact, I've got many of these photographs that show exactly what we're doing here. And if you look here, you'll see you go from a deep dark green, that rich green we just used there, to the real bright spots, which is what we're putting in. And you'll see little pockets of that here and there. And then, of course, the whites and the pinks will come in next time, and that's what will bring this whole painting together. Now, let's move on to our big tree over here. We need to get the bark on this thing. Now, we don't want to go too far with it, but we want to make this tree just a little more rounded. So let's go down here to our palette and let's mix up some sunshine. And just take a little white. And let's find us a clean spot here. And I want you to take a touch of orange, just a smidgen. That's like in cooking, a dab of this, a touch of this, a dash of that. I call it a smidgen here. Take this sort of a peach color. It's a beautiful, beautiful color. I call it sunshine. Starting on the left-hand side, take your knife and you go across like this and kind of gently blend it. Now you want a little texture. That's what, again, why we're using the knife. So you want just a subtle, soft highlight. You don't want a very strong highlight because you don't want to take away from your azaleas and the other flowering things that are going to happen in here. Because this tree, although it's important, it cannot, no matter what it takes, do not make it a feature, okay? Just fill in material, just part of the composition. But if you just kind of blend this, and see, I'm using sort of a rounded stroke. Whoops, went too far over there. So I'm going to have to work that over here in just a second. Now when you get down here, remember this is a fairly dark pocket, so you want to keep it dark. Okay, now let's go back with our number 6 bristle brush here, or any of your brushes. I'm going to put the color back in here. Make that a little darker. Just using pure burnt umber. I'm going to make this whole side a little darker anyway, so this is okay. Now you can see the tree there has a nice character, real nice character. Work it right on down into the red part of the azaleas here. And we're cooking. Okay, see how soft and beautiful that is? Got a little texture, kind of adds to the texture of the trees and things. Now let's go back to our palette knife again. What I like about this painting, and there's a little of something for everyone. For those of you that are more want to express yourself with not so much detail, that's how you can begin the painting. For those of you that like a little bit more tighter work, that's where you can go from here. So you can literally leave this painting almost at any point from here on out. You can refine it to the nth degree if you want to and make it almost like a photograph, or you can leave it sort of semi-impressionistic, which is usually where I end up with my work. I'm not into super realism, but I'm also not into extreme modern art or impressionism to the point to where it's out of focus. I like it to be a little bit more noticeable, identifiable. Put just a little highlight on the edge of the rest of the trees that are big enough to hold a highlight, and then we're going to be getting ready for the bright highlights. Can't wait. Although we're going to have to, because can't believe that already we're closing in on the end of the show. I literally, on this particular painting, as I mentioned to you in the beginning, this is one of the most outstanding pieces we've done in a long time. But it seems like so far on every show, the time has passed faster than normal. And it's because of the kind of painting it is. It's been so intriguing. You don't get bored with a painting like this usually. Now see, I'm just putting a quick, simple highlight on these. Just see that, just that little touch of highlight. Also down in the water, you want to do the same thing. Put just a little highlight here. Okay, don't want to get too much, but just a little bit there. I got a little too much on that one. There we go. See, that adds a little bit of touch of glow to the water. Then, folks, on your water, we got to get some ripples and a little bit of a glossy look. Now, if you'll just take your knife and just skim just right through the white paint, just the pure white, then you can come along the edge of the water like this and make these little thin sort of highlights like that. It's a thick, in term now, I'm going to contradict myself, it sounds like. It's thick paint, but it's a thin line of highlight, okay? So that's what I'm trying to tell you. And this will not only level the water, make it look flat, but it also gives it a little bit of a sparkle and a little bit of a glossy effect. All right, now folks, we're down to our last couple of minutes here. So what I want you to do is this. I'm going to be talking to you about your homework assignment, if you want to call it that, between now and our next session. Because next time we're going to finish the painting by putting all the bright colors on. So it's very, very important for you, if you are following along, to get your painting as far as I have it here, or you're going to have a little bit of a struggle keeping up next time. Okay? Now see, I'm pulling these right on across, and I want them to close in on detail here so that you can see how thick the paint is. And even if I have to angle it, I would. But the paint's on very thick. Don't be afraid of thick paint. I have noticed that most of us as beginners or novices, we're scared to death to put the paint on thick. But that's real important, especially if you're oil painting, because it adds that final, clean, sort of a glow to the painting, okay? Don't be afraid of the thick paint, whatever you do. Okay, see, I'm just putting these nice, thin, but thick paint across there. Here and there, out in the center even. Don't be afraid. It won't hurt you. Okay. Now, keep in mind, that we have an array of color. Notice all of the reds, the whites, the pinks, and all that. There are some other areas in the park here where you have the same thing with a little more sunlight hitting them. The beautiful white azaleas, the pink azaleas, and I heard someone that's producing our show say there's such thing as blue azaleas. There's no blue azaleas. I'm not sure where that came from, but anyway, we'll straighten that one out later. There's a lot of beautiful pink, white, and of course you have the rust color, which is another type of bush here, and all the greens. So let's go ahead now and get started. I've got a nice fresh palette, as you can see here, which is unusual for me. But let's mix up our first color, okay? So if I can get them to close down here on the palette, we're going to take white, a little touch of alizarin crimson here, not too much, and I want you to mix that in and get a very light pink. Now if you'll notice here, if you want to do some comparing, Mother Nature and this pink is identical. Isn't that great? Now if you want a little water to that to make it a little creamier, you can do that. I don't think I need to. This is pretty creamy. All right. So we have this color. And we're also going to need some pink. Now that's pink, but there's another pink we're going to make here. So we're going to mix up 2 or 3 colors here, so we'll have it ready to dip into, because we're going to have to move kind of quick here today to get this done. Now take another blob of white. Let's find another spot, say right here. And to that I'm going to add a little bit of my cadmium red. And you're going to see the difference in the pinks. All right, this is more of a true pink. That's got the crimson in it, which has a teeny touch of purple. So it's not a big change, but I like both of these pinks. And they're great to work with. And then, of course, we're going to use pure white also. Now, we're going to start off here, folks, by coming down here in our foreground and putting in these foreground azaleas, which, by the way, are the most important part of the painting in this area right here. Now, there's 2 ways to do this. I'm going to start first with a palette knife, using the end of the knife like this, and I'm going to put the highlight on just very quick and right on the edges. Let's just say thick and quick. Reload. Now it's very important for you to understand and remember that you see the highlight goes on. In between the highlights you have your little darker pockets. That's what gives these depth, okay? So I'm going to set this photograph aside for now, and let's just move on with this, because this is something that's going to take a little bit of time. Now don't be afraid to use both colors, okay? You can use the alizarin pink, which is very similar, and you can also use the red pink. Now what I'll do is I usually keep a paper towel handy, wipe my brush between each time I load. Oh boy, isn't that exciting? Look at that. It's just going to come alive. By putting this on kind of thick like this, you create a tremendous texture. Looks just like the sun glowing and hitting those. And don't be afraid to put this on as thick as you want. Now, I love the texture. Some people don't like texture, but in oil painting, you just about don't have a choice. You have to get that on thick in order for it to stay nice and clean. Now, I'm going to finish this, but one of my things about in painting is I like to move around the painting. So now I'm going to take some of this pink, and I'm going to go back here in the background now, and I'm going to go ahead and start in, and I just dab like this, just so we can start getting those bright pinks intermingled in the grasses. Isn't that outstanding? Now we don't want everything to be pink, but there is a lot of pink in here, and the pink just adds a nice touch to it. There's a lot of pure reds, so we'll get some pure red here in a minute. There are even some orangish colored reds. And I'm keeping a lot of space between clumps, okay? Again, keeping in mind that you have to have darkness within your clumps in order to give your azaleas or your flowers a little depth. Okay, around the tree back here. There you go. Wow. I'm having fun with this, you can probably tell. And I hope you are too. This is the kind of painting you can do over and over and over, different versions of it, and never ever come up with the same thing twice. It's just so incredible. Now I'm going to tie this one in with this one, just by simply taking some of the azaleas and tying it in with this clump so your eye kind of flows through. You don't want a clump, a clump, a clump, and a clump. Now we have pink dogwoods also in here. Back up in here, if you'll remember where we put this little reddish color, well, now you can come back in and put the cleaner, brighter color, which gives it that look that it needs to have of sunlight hitting the leaves. You want to be able to see this pink through the trees. I even like the sound of it. I think that's neat. But I want you to notice what's happening now. Every time you add that color, you're tying the painting together. All right? Up until now, it's been mostly the greens and the yellows and the lime greens. Now, by adding the complement and different forms of it, you're going to start tying the whole painting together with a lot of character. Now, see back in here, on the outer edge of these these deeper, darker reds, you put the pink. And it's kind of scattered around. Don't be afraid. See how nice that is? It just starts to come alive. The edge here. Now, most of your redbuds and your dogwoods and your pink dogwoods are not real large trees. They can get large, but the general basic height, I was just at our local nursery getting a little information on them yesterday. They average around 15, 20 feet is big. But they can get up to 20 feet, rarely any taller than that, but some of the old, mature ones do get on up close to 30 feet, but it's fairly rare for them to get just that tall. But around 20, 25 feet would be standard for a real mature tree. Now then, you see how the pink's starting to come alive now. Also, very quickly, wipe your palette knife out and go with the pure white. Now, I want you to notice something here. Here's a little close-up. Actually, let me show you two different versions. Okay, now here's a good example of what I'm talking about. You see the pink here, then you see the dogwood, the white dogwoods, then here's a close-up. Now, even though that's close-up, you still can't see the individual petals that much, okay? Just because we're still got distance. You'd have to be right up on it in order to see it. It's kind of like a photographer. If you want to get a real close-up, you have to use what they call a macro lens to get that real close-up look. And I've got one of those on my camera, and if I want a close-up of a flower, I have to go to the macro. Otherwise, it's going to give you the standard distance, okay? Now, the white can be anywhere in here that you want it to be. It's a color that is conducive to almost any painting, but you want to be careful that you choose the spot in where it will show up the best, okay? For instance, right in here, I can see white against this dark background. So what I'm going to do is go through the whole painting, and I'm going to choose the areas where the white will be most effective. Again, load your brush often. Your palette knife, wipe it out, reload real often. Just dab using the very tip of it. Now, I didn't go into any detail with you as to what kind of knife this was, but this is sort of a standard painting knife. It's got sort of a pear shape to it with a little point that's got a rounded tip. It's not a sharp tip. You want just a little bit of a rounded tip there, okay? You can experiment with a lot of different ones, folks. Some of you will like to use a knife that's flat. This is a flat palette knife, and I've got many, many kinds that I use, but I like the curved one here that's got the little rounded point on it. I'm going to come in here and see, I'll put a big blob of white, and just out of that blob right there, I will just use it and just move it around. Boy, that's great. Nothing more exciting than the finish of a painting like this. Now, also remember, we have white azaleas. So in some of these locations, in the foreground here, you want to get some white azaleas in there. They're just outstanding. Also, I want you to notice the different colors of the same thing You see it comes into more of a whitewash, the darker, which we're using here, but you can come in here literally with just white on top of that, and by blending the color in underneath, I can come up with a color almost identical to this. See, I'm just using pure white and then allowing the background to come through, all right? And just all of this depends on where the sun's hitting it and all those kind of things. So don't be afraid to put just plain white in there with it, and it'll come out to be a little bit more of a sunlit effect. And notice all the white just scattered throughout. Now that's what we're going to do now. We're going to finish the white part right now. So let's get back to work on that, and then we'll get back to some of the pinks and the reds, and we'll just have a good time the rest of the show just putting in the color. All right, I'm going to go ahead and finish branching this out because I really like this, the white right here, and this tree could be one of the dogwoods. So let's go ahead and do this. Just kind of scatter it through, and this little texture is very important. Don't be afraid of it. I'm going to come right on through the back here. Wipe my knife out. Now here again with the white, just so you'll know and understand it, when you put the white in there, you want it to tie in also, okay? So don't just put a splotch, a splotch, a splotch, and a splotch. You want it to be all over the painting, but you want it to have some sort of unity. Back in here now, there's a spot right here that I really think the white is important. Well, against this dark trunk, I think it's really sharp, and it just adds that nice touch of class and character. Going right behind the tree, or to be behind the limb there. Isn't that neat? I like the way that looks there. Now see, like I said before too, folks, don't hesitate to ever kind of congratulate yourself or pat yourself on the back once in a while when you do something that you know is good or you're happy with, even if it's not really good. If you're happy with it, see, that's the thing about being an artist. It's not always important that it's perfect. What's important is that you're happy with it. That's what makes art art. Okay, so important is to satisfy yourself. Unfortunately, today artists have to paint for the public because in order for them to make a living, they got to be able to get the money for it. So they have to paint a little bit more of what the public wants and not so much what they want. And that's unfortunate. Okay, now then, I'm going to branch out this tree a little more. These dogwoods have sort of an umbrella type shape. So when you put these on here, don't just dab. In fact, here's a good example of one right here. See how it's got sort of this umbrella shape? It's a beautiful tree. And then you see we've got some bright red azaleas, which we're getting ready to put in. We've got some that are sort of a salmon color. And you got just an array of different values and colors of these variations of them. So just have some fun experimenting. And you can't really go too wrong. I mean, of course, you don't want to put a bright blue flower in here in the middle of this necessarily. You could. You could put some purple ones in here. Okay, I'm going to finish this one. A little dab or two here and there. And then I'm going to go to some red. Ah, yes, we need red. In fact, I'm going to do a couple things here. Over here on our palette, now I'm going to take the cadmium red. I'm going to add a little bit of orange to it. And then a little touch of white. Not much, but that will give it sort of an opaque look and kind of clean it up. Mix this all together. That's a very nice vivid color. I'm going to put just a little more white. Don't get too much. There we go. That's pretty close. Now let's see what this does to us up here. We have a lot of red in here too, and I like this color, but especially right through here. Oh yeah. Okay, here's what we're going to do. Now take your number 10 bristle brush. I want you to rinse it out real good. Get it nice and clean. I'm actually using a number 12 here, but most of you have a number 10. I just do so many different paintings, different size paintings. I like a number 12 sometimes. I'm going to show you what we're going to do here, and this is critical. If you want to use a brush now to do some of this, I'm going to show you how to do that. So you've got two techniques for putting these in here. Now you come down here to your palette, and you sort of fan out your brush like this, see? And that makes the end of it nice and open. You dip straight into the red or whatever color you're using. Get plenty right on the end. And then you come up here like this, and we've done this before in other things for leaves and things, but you gently dab it like this. Okay, then you wipe your brush, just wipe it out. Make sure you keep fresh paint on there. Right across the top of this dark color you put in there. Keep wiping that brush out so you can keep the fresh clean. Keep the paint clean. Get it right here in a minute. I get so excited I can't even talk straight here. Okay. Just gently touch it. Reload by wiping fresh paint. This is just outstanding. I'm going to make a little bit more of a rise here. Yeah, see, it just kind of makes a little more of a controlled shape. Come over here on the right hand side. I'll do a similar thing here. Aha, look at that. Isn't that great? Maybe a little right underneath the pink ones. Sometimes you can sort of tie in 2 or 3 shades together. See, that's what I'm doing here. I'm taking the red, blending it just under the pink. And that's how you sort of tie this together. Wow. How would you like to live right there? Right here. Isn't that great how that works? Now this using the brush technique is very effective, but it gets most people frustrated because you usually get too smudgy. You see, the secret here is to keep it wiped out, keep fresh paint in it, and use a light, airy stroke so that you get that nice little texture. Now you can do the same thing for your close-up ones here if you want. Go back to the pink now. I'm going to go to the crimson pink, and I'm going to go ahead and put this up here. Notice how I'm dabbing like this, creating the basic shapes of these azaleas. Now I'm going to take this a little further because down in here it's not quite as vivid because it's out of the sun. Your brush. See, when you go back in here, notice how it's going from a bright pink to a dull pink. So you really are creating 2 effects here. You're creating more of a shadowed color, and then you're creating your sunlit color. So if you know how to use your brushes and your colors properly, you can do some tremendous things. Isn't that exciting how that's starting to come alive? Wow, this is getting more fun all the time. Okay, now let's come on over to the left-hand side, right here. Look at this. Isn't that beautiful? Looks just like the real thing. And as usual, folks, we're starting to run out of time, but that's okay. We're making good progress here. The main thing is that you see how to do this, and then you can take whatever time that you feel like you need to finish up your particular one. Now I'm going to rinse this out, and I'm going to use pure white this time, using the same technique. Now the good thing about the brush that I like is it creates a little bit more of a refined stroke. Your palette knife is designed to create texture, and it creates a brighter color because you don't smudge it as bad. But the thing about the brush is it does a nice job of, well, I've got too much water, of sort of refining it a little bit. For instance, right back here where I'm going to put this, where this dogwood is, I'm going to go ahead and make it just a little bit better shape by just dabbing straight on. Make it just a little bit more massive, so to speak. So now I'm back to the pure white, and I'm going to put a little white down in here. Yeah, that's great. Aha, just what we needed. Isn't this exciting, folks? I hope you're having a good time. I know I certainly am, and I'm going to always have a good time painting, because there's one thing about painting is you can lose yourself and forget the cares of the world for a while. You don't want to forget it for too long, because we've got a lot to do out there in this world, but at least for a short time, have some fun with your painting. It'll kind of lift your spirits, makes you have a little bit more of a hope that everything's going to be okay. A wonderful gift. Now then, you see how everything's just falling into place, folks? Isn't this wonderful? Have a good time with it, okay? And what I'm going to do here is we run out of time. I'm just going to sort of leave it with you and give you a couple of pointers. Number one, you can go back with your script brush now, and there are some little things, little limbs and things sticking out here and there. You want to put a few of those, just as a practical matter. You don't want to get too many, but this is a little bit of a contrast that adds a nice touch to things. And there may be some other areas where you want to have some of these things. A few more limbs coming up through in the background would not be a bad thing. In fact, I think would be helpful. There's a little bit more in the photograph than I'm showing you here. There's also a limb or two coming up below here. And see, this just adds that little bit of interest to the painting. A little bit of character, a little bit of contrast. Now, folks, you can add as much color as you want. You can take it brighter than this if you want. You can tone it down a little bit if you want. It really makes no difference to me as long as you're happy and you're excited about what you're doing. And yes, you can add some other basic similar colors. If you want some soft purples, you can also come back in with some more yellows. Be careful with the yellow, but the yellow wouldn't be bad if you wanted to accent just a little bit with the yellow. And I can show you very quickly how you can do that. There's a couple of spots where that might be fun, especially right along here. So just enough to accent that, okay? Well, folks, as usual, we're out of time. We're going to start a brand new painting in our next session, so I hope you can join us then. It's been great fun bringing you this wonderful azalea painting in the early spring. So God bless you. Stay inspired. Keep painting, and I'm going to see you again real soon on another Inspirational Painting.